The Croxian mercenary fleet hung in the darkness above the contested world of Kepler 442 be like a collection of sleeping predators. Their ships, sleek and angular, bore the scars of 1,000 victories across the galaxy. Within the command vessel Blood Talon, Commander Vextar studied the primitive blue-green planet below with 4 pairs of eyes that glowed amber in the dim light. Another easy conquest, his second-in-command Kralik chittered, mandibles clicking with what passed for amusement among their insectoid species. The inhabitants barely have interplanetary travel. Their weapons are chemical-based projectiles, primitive. Vextar-S claws drummed against the command console. In his 3 centuries of warfare, he had seen civilizations rise and fall. The Croxians were the galaxy's most feared mercenaries for good reason. Standing 9 feet tall with exoskeletons harder than most starship armor, they had never met a species that could match them in individual combat. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything these humans possessed. The client pays well for this world's resources, Vextar rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. The humans have established mining colonies on the southern continent. Eliminate them. Take the world, simple. The tactical display showed scattered human settlements across the planet's surface. Intelligence reports indicated a primitive military with outdated equipment. No orbital defenses worth mentioning. No energy shields. No plasma weapons. It would be like crushing insects beneath their claws. "Sir," came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform. The creature was pathetically small, perhaps 6 feet tall, with soft pink skin and no visible natural weapons. Its face was calm, almost relaxed. "This is Colonel Marcus Hayes, United States Marine Corps Expeditionary Force Kepler," the humans said in their primitive language, which the universal translators rendered into Croxian. "You've entered sovereign human space without authorization. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The entire bridge erupted in what could only be described as laughter if giant insects could laugh. The sound was like metal scraping against stone, filled with malicious amusement. "Did it just threaten us?" Kralik asked, wiping moisture from his compound eyes. Vextar leaned forward, studying the human's image with interest. There was something about the creature's posture, the way it held itself, that spoke of confidence rather than fear. Strange. Most species either fled in terror or attempted desperate negotiations when faced with Croxian mercenaries. "Human," Vextar spoke into the communicator, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "You are addressing the Croxian 7th Mercenary Battalion. We have conquered 47 worlds. Your species is unknown to us, which means you are weak. Surrender now, and your death will be swift." The human's expression didn't change. If anything, a slight smile played at the corners of its mouth. "Let me explain something to you, Bug Boy. You're not dealing with scared colonists or merchant vessels. You're dealing with United States Marines. We've been killing things bigger and uglier than you since 1775. So here's my counteroffer. Turn around. Fly away and pretend you never found this place. Because if you come down here, I guarantee you'll regret it." The communication cut off. Silence filled the bridge for a long moment. Then Krilik's mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign of barely contained rage. "Commander, permission to deploy the shock troops. I want to personally tear that creature apart." But Vextar was thinking. In 3 centuries of warfare, he had learned to read enemies, to understand their strengths and weaknesses. Fear was the usual response to Croxian presence. Desperate bravado was common. But this human had shown neither. There had been something else in its voice. Not fear, not desperation. Something almost like anticipation? "Run a detailed scan of the human settlements," he ordered. Full spectrum analysis. The sensor officer's claws danced over his console. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion. "Sir, the readings are unusual. The humans appear to have established defensive positions around their main settlement. But their technology signatures are inconsistent with our intelligence. Explain. Their weapons are indeed projectile-based, but the energy signatures suggest refinements we didn't expect. And sir, there are underground installations we can't penetrate with our scans. Some kind of dense material is blocking our sensors. Vexstar's antennae twitched with interest. How many humans in the main settlement? Approximately 1,200, sir. But the distribution is strange. They're not clustered in the center as expected. They're spread throughout the perimeter in small groups. Defensive positions, Vexstar mused. They intend to fight. Krillic snorted derisively. 1,200 primitives against our battalion. Sir, we have 2,000 of the finest warriors in the galaxy. Our exoskeletons can deflect their primitive projectiles. Our weapons can level buildings. This is not a battle. It's an extermination? Vexstar studied the tactical display more carefully. The human settlement wasn't laid out like the cities they usually conquered. Instead of a centralized population hub, it was structured like a military base. Defensive positions at key points. Clear lines of sight between positions. Overlapping fields of fire. These aren't civilians, he realized aloud. Sir, look at the pattern. This isn't a mining colony. It's a military installation disguised as a mining colony. Vexstar's respect for the humans increased slightly. Deception was a tool of superior intellects. Even if they are military, Krillic argued, they're still primitive. Our intelligence shows their weapons can't penetrate Croxian battle armor. Their largest explosives are barely sufficient to damage our landing craft. And they have no air support. No orbital defenses? No energy weapons? Commander, this is still an easy victory. Vexstar nodded slowly. Krillic was correct, of course. The technology gap was insurmountable, but something about the human colonel's confidence bothered him. In his experience, only two types of enemies showed such calm in the face of overwhelming odds: fools and dangerous opponents. Deploy the first wave, he ordered. 100 troops. Probe their defenses. Identify their capabilities. I want to know what we're really facing before we commit our full force. The first wave of Croxian warriors descended from orbit in heavily armored drop pods, their hulls glowing white-hot from atmospheric entry. Each pod contained 5 fully armed soldiers. Their natural exoskeletons supplemented with advanced battle armor that could withstand anything short of a direct hit from a starship weapon. Sergeant Kethmore emerged from his pod onto the alien world's surface, his compound eyes automatically adjusting to the planet's light spectrum. The air was breathable for Croxians, though thinner than their homeworld. Around him, his squad mates took up defensive positions as they had done on dozens of other worlds. Perimeter secure, he reported into his communicator. No immediate resistance. Advancing on target designation Alpha. The human settlement lay 2 kilometers ahead, nestled in a valley between 2 ridgelines. From their elevated position, Kethmore could see the primitive structures clearly. Simple metal buildings, obviously prefabricated. No visible defensive systems. No energy barriers. Just static positions that looked hastily constructed. Almost too easy, muttered Corporal Zifak beside him. The Croxian advance began with textbook precision. 4 squads spread out in a standard assault formation, using the natural terrain to mask their approach. Their technology allowed them to move with surprising stealth despite their size. Their armor's camouflage systems, adapting to the local environment, they had covered half the distance to the human perimeter. When the first shot rang out, the sound was wrong. Instead of the expected crack of primitive gunpowder weapons, it was a sharp, precise snap that echoed across the valley. The round struck Trooper Vexcall in the center of his chest plate with enough force to stagger him backward. For a moment, Kethmore felt relief. The armor had held. The primitive human weapons were exactly as weak as intelligence had suggested. But then he looked more closely at Vexcall and felt the first flutter of concern. The chest plate hadn't been penetrated, but there was a significant dent in the armor where the projectile had struck. No human weapon in their intelligence files should have been capable of such impact against Croxian battle armor. Contact left. Someone shouted, and suddenly the entire valley erupted in gunfire, but this wasn't the scattered, panicked shooting they had expected from primitives. This was disciplined, coordinated fire from multiple positions they hadn't even detected. Muzzle flashes appeared from concealed positions throughout the valley, and the Croxians found themselves caught in carefully planned crossfire. The human weapons were definitely projectile-based. But these weren't the simple firearms their intelligence had described. Each shot struck with tremendous force, and while the Croxian armor held, the impacts were far more significant than expected. More concerning was the precision. The humans weren't spraying wildly. Each shot was aimed at specific targets with deadly accuracy. Fall back to Overwatch position, Kethmar ordered, but even as he spoke he realized the humans had anticipated this too. The high ground behind them was suddenly alive with more moves. Colonel Marcus Hayes watched the tactical display in the underground command bunker with the calm satisfaction of a man whose plans were unfolding exactly as expected. Around him, Marine communications specialists coordinated the defensive effort with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Sir. First squad reports 18 aliens neutralized. 12 more with damaged equipment, reported Gunnery Sergeant Elizabeth Torres, her scarred face illuminated by the blue glow of multiple screens. 0 Marine casualties. Hayes nodded but kept his expression neutral. Tell them to maintain their positions. This was just the opening act. Above ground, the Croxian first wave was retreating in disorder, their supposedly impenetrable armor smoking and sparking from electromagnetic damage. Hayes had been counting on their arrogance. Most alien species they'd encountered in the past year had made the same mistake, assuming that primitive meant ineffective. "Colonel," called out Lieutenant Chung from the sensor station, "orbital reconnaissance shows the aliens are regrouping. Looks like they're preparing a larger assault. Estimated 500 troops this time." "Let them come," Hayes replied. "Have all squads received their targeting updates?" "Yes, sir. Every Marine knows exactly which alien to shoot when the time comes." Hayes allowed himself a small smile. The Marines under his command weren't just any infantry unit. They were the 2nd Reconnaissance Battalion, veterans of 3 different alien conflicts, who had been specifically assigned to this mining colony because they were the best at what they did, making life extremely difficult for anything that threatened human interests. Commander Vexstar was no longer amused. His first wave had limped back to orbit with tailies that bordered on the impossible. Primitive humans had outmaneuvered his warriors, damaged their equipment, and forced a retreat. In 3 centuries of warfare, no species had accomplished such a feat during a Croxian first contact. "They were ready for us," Krillic reported, his usual swagger replaced by uncertainty. "Their defensive positions were perfectly positioned for our approach routes. They knew exactly where we would land, how we would advance, and what our capabilities were." "That's impossible," Vexstar growled. "This species has never encountered Croxians before. Our tactics are classified military intelligence. Nevertheless, sir, they countered every move we made. Their weapons, while primitive in design, are far more effective than our intelligence suggested." "And their tactical coordination?" Krillic paused, searching for words. "Sir, they fight like they've been studying us for years." Vexstar studied the after-action reports with growing unease. His warriors described human soldiers who moved with absolute precision, who anticipated every Croxian tactic, who seemed to know exactly where each warrior would be at any given moment. It was as if the humans had fought Croxians before. "Sensor analysis," he demanded. "What did we learn about their capabilities?" The intelligence officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "Sir, the humans are using technology we don't understand. Their weapons appear to be simple kinetic projectiles, but they're achieving penetration values that should be impossible with chemical propellants. Additionally, they demonstrated electromagnetic pulse capabilities that shouldn't exist at their technological level. More concerning," added the tactical officer, "is their coordination. They're operating with real-time intelligence that's somehow bypassing our electronic countermeasures. Every human squad knew exactly where our forces were at all times. Vexstar's compound eyes focused on a particular detail in the reports. They moved through underground tunnels our sensors couldn't detect. How extensive is this tunnel network? Unknown, sir. Our deep scans are being blocked by an unknown metallic compound. The entire human settlement appears to be built on top of an extensive underground facility. The pieces were beginning to form a picture that Vexstar didn't like. This wasn't a simple mining colony. The humans had built a fortress disguised as a civilian settlement, manned by soldiers who fought with a level of tactical sophistication that rivaled the galaxy's best military units. "Deploy the main assault force," he ordered finally. 500 troops. Full battle configuration. I want those humans to understand what they're truly facing. "Sir," Krillic ventured, "perhaps we should request additional support from the fleet? The humans have proven more capable than expected." Vexstar's claws extended slightly, a sign of controlled anger. 500 Croxian warriors against 1,200 primitive humans. We are not requesting support for such a minor engagement. Deploy the assault force. The second wave descended from orbit like falling stars, their drop pods creating a thunderous barrage as they struck the planet's surface. This time, the Croxians deployed in a much wider pattern, attempting to avoid the kill zones that had trapped their first wave. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez watched through her rifle scope as the alien pods opened like deadly flowers across the valley floor. From her concealed position on the eastern ridge, she had a perfect view of the assault unfolding below. Beside her, Corporal Jackson adjusted his own weapon and spoke quietly into his radio. "Overwatch actual, Bravo team. Count 40 pods in Sector 7. Aliens are deploying in standard assault formation." "Copy." "Bravo team, wait for the signal." Rodriguez had been fighting aliens for 2 years now. Ever since humanity's first contact with the Centauri Collective had led to a series of territorial disputes. She'd learned that every alien species made the same fundamental mistake. They assumed human technology was primitive because it looked primitive. They never bothered to ask why humans had stuck with kinetic weapons. When the galaxy had moved on to energy-based systems, the answer was simple: kinetic weapons worked. Especially when those kinetics were depleted uranium penetrators fired from electromagnetically enhanced rifles at velocities that would make physicists weep. "Target acquired," she whispered, centering her crosshairs on an alien commander whose armor bristled with additional equipment. Range, 800 meters. Wind, negligible. The shot was perfect. The specially designed round struck the alien commander's helmet with enough force to crack the supposedly impenetrable faceplate. The creature staggered but didn't fall, which was fine. Rodriguez wasn't trying to kill them all. She was trying to make them angry. Across the valley, 47 other Marines fired simultaneously. The coordinated volley struck the Croxian formation like a hammer. Each shot carefully aimed to cause maximum psychological impact while causing visible damage to their armor. The aliens wanted a fight? The Marines would give them one, but this time, instead of staying in their defensive positions, the Marines did something the Croxians didn't expect. They attacked. Sergeant David Kim led his squad through the tunnel network beneath the valley floor, their movement coordinated by real-time intelligence from orbital satellites the aliens hadn't detected. The Croxians were expecting another defensive battle. They weren't expecting to find Marines appearing behind their lines like ghosts. "Breacher." "Charges set," reported Lance Corporal Williams as he positioned the final explosive device beneath the aliens' landing zone. 30 seconds to detonation? The underground network was more than just tunnels. It was a fully integrated combat facility built specifically for asymmetric warfare against technologically superior opponents. Every tunnel could be sealed, every passage could be flooded with gas, and every chamber had multiple escape routes. The Marines had spent 6 months preparing this trap. The explosions began as a low rumble that grew into a thunderous roar as the carefully placed charges detonated in sequence. The Croxian landing zone suddenly became a series of smoking craters as the ground beneath their feet collapsed into the tunnel network below. Dozens of the alien warriors found themselves trapped in underground chambers with no way out except through Marine-controlled corridors above ground. The Croxians tried to regroup, but the Marines weren't giving them time. From concealed positions throughout the valley, rocket-propelled grenades streaked toward alien formations with devastating accuracy. The explosions weren't powerful enough to kill Croxians outright, but they were more than sufficient to disable their equipment and disorient their formations. "Sir," reported a panicked Croxian trooper to his commander, "the humans have somehow infiltrated our perimeter. We're taking fire from positions that should be impossible to reach." Commander Sektar, leading the ground assault, tried to make sense of the tactical situation. His forces were scattered, disorganized, and under attack from directions that made no tactical sense. Human soldiers appeared to be materializing from solid rock, firing with impossible accuracy, and then vanishing before his warriors could return effective fire. "Establish a defensive perimeter," he ordered. "All units, fall back to Consolidation Point Alpha." But when his forces reached the designated rally point, they found it occupied by a full platoon of Marines, who had been waiting for them with crew-served weapons and pre-positioned ammunition. The humans opened fire with what appeared to be some form of enhanced machine gun that fired projectiles capable of actually penetrating Croxian armor at close range. "Fall back to Point Bravo," Sektar commanded, but Point Bravo was already under Marine control as well. So was Point Charlie. And Delta. The humans had anticipated every possible Croxian rally point and had... Commander Vextar stood in his personal quarters aboard the Blood Talon, studying the holographic display of the captured human soldiers with growing unease. His interrogation specialists had been working on the 3 Marines for 6 hours, using every technique in the Croxian arsenal. The results were disturbing. "They're not talking, sir," reported Chief Interrogator Yexkal, his usually confident demeanor replaced by frustration. "Standard psychological pressure techniques have no effect. Pain compliance methods are ineffective due to some form of biochemical conditioning. And, sir, they seem to find our threats amusing." Vextar examined the recordings of the interrogation sessions. The humans sat calmly in their restraints, occasionally making what the universal translator identified as jokes. When threatened with death, they shrugged. When threatened with torture, they laughed. When offered bribes or negotiations, they simply stared at their captors with expressions of polite interest. "Have you learned anything useful?" Vextar asked. "Only this, sir." Yexkal activated a recording of the youngest human prisoner, a female with sergeant stripes who couldn't have been more than 25 standard years old. When asked about their defensive capabilities, she said something unusual. The recording played, "You guys really didn't do your homework, did you? We've been fighting bugs like you for 2 years now. Hell, the Centauri war bugs were tougher than you are, and we beat them in 6 months." Vextar's blood chilled. "Centauri war bugs?" "Sir, cross-referencing our intelligence networks. The Centauri swarm was eliminated 18 months ago by an unknown species. The few survivors described their enemies as small, soft-skinned bipeds who fought with primitive kinetic weapons and impossible tactics." The implications hit Vextar like a physical blow. The humans had been fighting a galactic war for years. They had encountered and defeated species with capabilities similar to or exceeding Croxian technology. This wasn't first contact. This was a battle between experienced warriors and naive mercenaries who had never faced a truly dangerous opponent. "Sir?" his communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving another transmission from the planetary surface." Colonel Hayes appeared on the main screen again, but this time his background was different. Instead of a simple command post, he was standing in what was obviously a fully equipped military facility. Banks of sophisticated equipment hummed in the background, and Hayes was flanked by Marines in full combat gear. "Commander Vextar," Hayes began, and Vextar noted with alarm that the human knew his name and rank. "I believe you have some of my people. I'd like them back." Your soldiers are prisoners of war, Vextar replied, trying to project strength he no longer felt. They will be released when you surrender your installation. Hayes smiled, and there was something predatory in the expression. Let me clarify something for you. You're not holding prisoners of war. You're holding United States Marines who volunteered for a deep reconnaissance mission. The difference is important. Explain. Marines don't surrender. Marines don't break under interrogation. And Marines always accomplish their mission, which in this case was to gather intelligence on your ships, your technology, and your capabilities while you were distracted by our little ground engagement. Vextar felt the first flutter of real fear. What do you mean? Check your sensor logs, Commander. Every minute my people have been aboard your ship. They've been collecting data. Passive scans of your technology, analysis of your communications protocols, intelligence on your command structure. They've been doing their jobs, and you've been helping them do it. The communications officer was already pulling up the sensor logs, his mandibles clicking with increasing alarm. Sir, there have been numerous low-level electromagnetic emissions from the prisoner holding area. I thought it was interference from their equipment, but it was active scanning, Hayes confirmed helpfully. Marine recon teams are equipped with some very sophisticated intelligence-gathering equipment. Your security scans probably missed most of it because it's designed to look like biological processes. Vextar's claws extended fully, cutting grooves in his command chair. The humans had turned their capture into an intelligence operation. Even as prisoners, they were gathering information that would be invaluable in future encounters. Now, Hayes continued, I'm going to make you a deal. Return my Marines unharmed, withdraw from this system, and file a report with your clients that this world is too heavily defended for profitable conquest. In return, I won't share the intelligence my people have gathered with the rest of the human fleet. What human fleet? Vextar demanded. Hayes' smile widened. The one that's been shadowing you since you entered this system. Did you really think we'd defend a strategic resource with just one battalion of Marines? The tactical display lit up with new contacts as previously undetected human ships began broadcasting their positions. Frigate-class vessels appeared from behind asteroids and planetary debris, their profiles sleek and aggressive. More concerning were the larger ships that had somehow approached undetected, their sensor signatures suggesting heavy cruiser or battleship classification. Impossible, breathed Krellick. Our sensors show no evidence of a human fleet. Your sensors are designed to detect energy signatures consistent with galactic standard technology, Hayes explained patiently. Human ships use different principles. We've found that stealth is more effective than shields when you're fighting enemies who assume technological superiority. Admiral Sarah. Chion's voice cut through the communications channel with the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Commander Vextar, this is Admiral Chung. Commanding the human expeditionary fleet, you are surrounded by 17 ships carrying enough firepower to reduce your entire force to component atoms. Withdraw immediately or discover why humans have been winning wars for 10,000 years. Vextar studied the tactical display with the growing realization that he had walked into a carefully planned trap. The human mining colony was bait. The defensive battle was a test of Croxian capabilities. The entire engagement had been designed to gather intelligence while demonstrating human military effectiveness. Sir, his sensor officer reported with barely controlled panic, I'm detecting additional human vessels at the edge of the system. Long-range scouts estimate. Sir, it appears to be a full battle group, potentially 40 ships or more. The scope of the human operation became clear. This wasn't a defensive action. It was a demonstration. The humans had assembled an entire fleet to make a point to the Croxian mercenary corps, and that point was becoming increasingly obvious. Humanity was not prey. Commander, Hayes said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, you have 30 minutes to return my Marines and begin your withdrawal. After that, Admiral Chung will demonstrate why human beings are the only species in the galaxy that has never lost a war. Vextar looked around his bridge at officers who had never experienced fear in battle. who were now staring at sensor readings that showed them surrounded by an enemy fleet they had never detected. For 3 centuries, the Croxian mercenary corps had been the apex predators of the galaxy. Today they had discovered they were small fish in a much larger ocean. How? He asked finally. How did your species become so effective at warfare? Hayes' expression grew thoughtful. Commander, you've been fighting civilians and merchant species for centuries. Populations that develop technology to make life easier, to explore the galaxy, to build and create. But humans? We came from a world where everything was trying to kill us. We spent 10,000 years learning to kill things that were bigger, stronger, faster, and more dangerous than we were. When we finally reached the stars and discovered we weren't alone, we found out that lesson served us well. The Centauri swarm had ships that could punch through neutronium armor, Hayes continued. The vegan hegemony could manipulate gravity and time. The Altair Collective had weapons that could destroy entire star systems. But none of them had ever faced an opponent that treated war as an art form. None of them had ever encountered a species that had weaponized adaptation itself. The human admiral's voice cut in again. Commander, you now have 25 minutes. Vexstar made the hardest decision of his 3-century military career. Release the prisoners, he ordered. All units, prepare for immediate withdrawal. Sir, Krellick protested. Our reputation, Vexstar interrupted, will survive. Our species will survive. Our pride is not worth extinction. He turned to the communications officer. Open a channel to all Croxian forces. The 3 captured Marines were returned via shuttle, unharmed and apparently in good spirits. As they disembarked in the human facility, Vexstar could see them immediately reporting to their colonel with what was obviously detailed intelligence about Croxian ship layouts, technology, and capabilities. As the Croxian fleet prepared for withdrawal, Vexstar composed his report to the Mercenary Guild Council. It would be the most important communication in Croxian history, and it would change everything about how the galaxy viewed both humans and warfare. Colonel Hayes watched the alien fleet disappear into hyperspace from the observation deck of the command facility. Around him, Marines celebrated their victory with the quiet professionalism of soldiers.